Well, hello, greetings, salutations. How the heck are you? I'm Kimberly HayDay.
And hello there, I'm Amanda Day.
You're listening to the Fundraising HayDay podcast,
where we cover the how-tos of grants and fundraising,
and how we can all do a better job of changing the world through philanthropy.
And Patreon subscribers, you can get these episodes early, so we hope you check it out.
So much more. Don't sleep on Patreon because there's lots of good stuff there.
Yep.
So are you looking for affordable training in grant writing or grant management that you can participate in on your own schedule? I bet you are. Then check it out. Check us out. We have got a lineup of on-demand offerings in the form of audio courses. So if you like the podcast, think of it as a concentrated version that is really focused strictly on how to do this thing or how does this thing work. These things include grant writing and grant management, and the audio courses are actually 20 to 30 minutes each, as opposed to our wide-ranging podcast times. And they start at around $19.99 per course, or you can save a few bucks and get the entire series of grant writing, grant management, or both for $197.
Yep. And the nice thing too is once you download, you have an entire year to listen. So you can listen and re-listen to your heart's content for a full 12 months. Plus, each recording comes with a resource guide with additional information about the specific topic. So it's not just the recording you're getting, but additional bonus content that goes right along with it. So
we've got links and all the good things. I mean, they're really well done.
Yep. So you can check out the entire lineup on our website, which is haydayservices.com/shop.
So today we're talking about something that makes a lot of nonprofit professionals and maybe some local government folks too, right? Nervous. And it's advocacy. But really, we're going to break down what it actually means, how it's different from lobbying, how you and your organization can show up and speak up without jeopardizing your nonprofit status, because it's the truth. So stay tuned.
We are so excited to introduce you, our listeners, to the second half, Season 9 sponsor of the Fundraising HayDay podcast. The Encore Institute for Social Impact partners with nonprofit organizations to secure funding, develop actionable strategies, strengthen capacity, and demonstrate results. We're joined by Shelley Latham, GPC, founder and CEO of Encore, to learn more about their work with a mini-series during the second 12 episodes of this season.
So, Shelley, a major focus of Encore's work, as you have explained it, is helping nonprofit agencies build long-term sustainability. So the billion-dollar question is, how can an organization plan for sustainability when funding conditions, like they are now, feel so unpredictable?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges is that we sometimes treat sustainability like it means predicting the future perfectly, and that can make sustainability feel completely impossible. But what I believe a big part of dealing with uncertainty is actually a shift in organizational mindset. And we have to stop treating change as an interruption to the plan and start recognizing that change is just the environment in which we operate. Predicting the future has never been realistic, and attempting to do that now feels even more challenging than ever before. But what is realistic is developing planning approaches and processes that help organizations adjust as conditions change. What we're seeing is that the organizations navigating uncertainty most effectively are those that readily accept or even embrace the reality of ongoing change and build that adaptability into how they think and operate. That's why a lot of our work now focuses on helping organizations build planning and decision-making practices that are grounded enough to provide strategic direction, but they're also flexible enough to evolve as conditions change.
What a great approach. Thanks. To find out more about this incredible team with expertise across all aspects of nonprofit operations and how to hire them, visit EncoreISI.com. Encore is committed to being the most effective and highest value partner possible. So, to get the conversation started, we thought that I don't know, Amanda. I run into a lot of folks that confuse advocacy and lobbying, or they think that because they're a nonprofit, they're like, we can't do any kind of advocacy. And I've experienced that. I've had board members tell me this, and EDs tell me this, and it's just like, we can't do anything at all. And maybe 10, 15 years ago, you could just let it slide, because I know I did. Because, guilty as charged. But now is not the time to go, we just can't do that. So let's start off. I'll define advocacy, and then you can define lobbying, right? Yeah. We'll just run through the differences, because they are very different. So advocacy, I'm going to define this as a broad effort to support opinion, like in the general public, policies or practices in support of a cause. That can run the gamut, right? I am old enough to remember when there were huge advocacy campaigns around using seatbelts, because it wasn't always mandatory. So awareness campaigns like that, or something, of course, much more recent. Public testimony, building coalitions, media outreach, all of those things, right? That's advocacy, right? Mm-hmm. It's generally permitted for 501c3s in this form. Yeah. However, as always, when in doubt, if it's a grant-funded project, you want to check, particularly if it's federally funds, and we'll get to details about that later. You always want to check it out. But broadly, generally, typically, and usually, do I need to say anything else lawyerly? Allegedly, there's no limit on how you can do it, how much of it you can do, as long as it furthers your mission, right? Yeah. So that's just a broad overview of advocacy. What you got for lobbying?
So lobbying then is a very specific subset of advocacy that attempts to influence legislation. And you mentioned at the outset talking about, this is a big deal for nonprofits and maybe for local governments. And honestly, in my experience, not a big deal for local governments, because we're around politicians all the time. We're used to lobbying. There's nothing that says we can't do it. We just have to, if we are going for federal grants, there's that lobbying form you have to fill out to say that, yes, we are lobbying. But local governments are much more comfortable doing advocacy and lobbying work, because that's the nature of the businesses of what they do, I think. So
that's good to know.
And so I'm not saying nonprofits should be like them, because we're about to talk about some things that nonprofits cannot do. Okay. But there's two types of lobbying. One is direct lobbying. This is when you're reaching out specifically to your legislators, other elected officials, their staff, and you're talking about, hey, we have a problem with Senate bill, blah, 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 and here's why. Or, hey, we think you need to continue to fund this grant at this level because blah, 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 right?
This is where I make the disclaimer to people who are listening that both Amanda and I are legally obligated to say, hey.
Yes.
It's a Georgia, it's a little known Georgia law, and we are going to uphold that law. Yes. So please continue, friend.
Okay. So that's direct lobbying, when you're reaching out directly, right? And again, very different than just saying, hey, thanks for this grant. Because of it, we were able to serve 100 people. We were able to do these programs. That's not lobbying. The lobbying comes in when you're like, and because of that, you need to keep funding it and you need to keep giving us this grant. That's when the lobbying piece, that's that direct lobbying piece. The other thing is grassroots lobbying. This is when you are urging the public to contact legislators about specific legislation. So it's not just that you're doing it, but you're telling your community, hey, we need to do this. Okay. So that's what lobbying is. Now, as a 501c3, you can lobby, but it has to be an inconsequential part of your budget, right? Or part of your overall activities. Generally, no more than 5 to 20% of your activities and your budget depending on what level of testing is used, so it's going to vary depending on, I think, the type of nonprofit you are, where you're located, all those different things, right? So even lobbying is allowed but it can't be the main focus. So, and if you're worried about that, then again, you don't have to lobby, but advocacy is not lobbying, which is what we're trying to do. One thing that is never permitted for nonprofits is partisan political activity. So either endorsing or opposing certain candidates. Okay. So, and I will say the same thing as when I remember very vividly one of the first years I was working in local government, it was election time, and our city manager reminded all of us, like, we have incumbents that some of you probably really like. We are not only can you not say, hey, I'm voting for them, or hey, they're my person, it's part of our job. But he's like, we also cannot be helping them, right? So we can't, if they show up and say, hey, I need this for my campaign, we're not allowed to do that, right? So that aspect is the same across the board when it comes to local governments and nonprofits.
So to just boil it down, all lobbying is advocacy based on how you just defined it, but not all advocacy is lobbying. So it's
important.
Fear of lobbying should not stop nonprofits from doing advocacy work, because they're two different things.
Yep. So Kimberly and I want to talk about advocacy in 3 different kind of buckets, if you will, of topics. And so we're going to start with the first one, which is talking about advocacy work for your organization, your community, your clients. And so this is really kind of what we're talking about as working at a nonprofit. What are types of things that you, as the grant professional, development director, fundraiser, whatever role you play in your organization, what can you do for both your organization, your community, and clients, right? And this is why it's important to be doing advocacy work at this level, is that nonprofits are very uniquely positioned to speak for those without a voice, right? Because oftentimes nonprofits are serving people in communities in areas of the country where people just either don't have the time, the resources, the whatever, to be doing the advocacy for themselves. Maybe it's because it's a marginalized community. Maybe we're serving young children that don't even know about how politics and advocacy and all those things work, right? Or whatever it is. And so that's why it's so important for nonprofits to be doing this work, because sometimes we need to be able to speak up for the people who cannot do it themselves, right? So let's talk about, well, I guess, Kimberly, if we could start, like, because you've worked more in nonprofits as an employee. I've only worked as a grant professional consultant for a nonprofit. So do you have any examples of some advocacy work you've done with some of the different organizations you've worked with?
I can start. Most recently, I can hold out some clients and former clients that do this really well. Holding sort of meetings around specific issues, and like mental health. Like I worked for a statewide mental health coalition for a few years as they were transitioning to more full-time staff, and they would do. I think they did a couple of letters to the editor. And then they would also hold forums and trainings. Since this was a statewide organization, they would hold forums and trainings on how to advocate, how to do advocacy out in the community. They developed fact sheets and small presentations that people could use to educate elected officials about issues like the importance of access to mental health services, and how poorly distributed mental health services were in this particular state. Yeah. They built coalitions and regional coalitions around mental health access for all. They, I feel like on their board, their board members were very highly placed in state mental health agencies or related departments of those larger agencies, and worked with legislators on educating them on how to frame this and systems. So they provided research and other things to help legislators and make their staff people draft bills and different things. So it was advocacy and then maybe crossing into lobbying because they were providing specific information, but they weren't necessarily drafting the legislation.
Yeah.
And they also document their advocacy work as a part of their, they do quarterly updates and annual reports. So that's just a quick run through, of how they would do.
I think this is a great examples. And to me, the thing that kept rising up is that you were saying it was education. And that really is so much of what advocacy is one, educating people that this is a specific problem in a community or a region or a state or across the nation, world, whatever. But then also making people understand, yes, it's a problem. And also this is how it's impacting people. And these are ways that we can help flip the script and make things better. So I love that. Thinking about advocacy as education, because ultimately that's what it is.
That's really what it was.
Yeah.
And they were really big on doing the distributing research and data and synthesizing that into fact sheets and other things that other people could use. And I've used on occasion talking about access to mental health. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say another example is I've never done this, but have heard tales of this before. Is it could be your senator or some elected official could ask your organization to come and testify at different public hearings. And again, not testify that we must have this grant money, but just say, yes, we received, X amount of dollars from the Department of so-and-so through this grant program. And through it, we were able to accomplish. And so you're just educating people about, so if, and that may be, you may have an elected official who's really fighting to keep funding for something and other people that don't understand the value or the importance of it. And so they may want to have some testimony from it to say, this
like
is why
subject matter experts. It's like subject matter experts of and it could be any issue: health, human services, arts and culture, the importance of early childhood education, after school programs, clean drinking water, safe playgrounds. All of these things have tons of data around them about how lacking access to that affects the community's health overall. This should not be rockets. This should not be news, rather, to anyone. Although sometimes it is, and sometimes people ignore science, and but I'm just saying that that's the kind of advocacy work that I would hope that more nonprofits are able to engage in. Not everyone has the bandwidth or the time, and I get that, but these are important topics. I think a lot of times, and I talked about this right when we first got started, right, about Amanda, your experience has been, hey, you know what? Our local governments were down with that because elected officials are in and among us. But so many board members where I've either worked as an employee or as a consultant are like, oh, we can't do that. Or it's like, oh, we don't have time. Or, oh my gosh, it's going to be controversial. And my gentle rejoinder is, ending hunger should not be controversial. Right. Helping families thrive should not be controversial. Clean drinking water should not be controversial. And if it is, let's just sit with that for a minute. Yeah. I would. You don't have to take political sides to argue that basic health and human services and lack of it. If people don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, then they're going to have a harder time making healthier choices. That's kind of logical.
Yeah. Well, and to me, advocacy is kind of a two-parter in the fact that we're, as grant professionals, obviously wanting the advocacy so people understand that this is a problem, so we continue to get funding for the needs of the community. So that's part of it is understanding that this is a problem so we can fund and help people have clean drinking water and be fed and do these things. But even more importantly, advocacy is important because if all we're doing is putting Band-Aids on, like, if for people who don't have enough money to buy fresh fruits and veggies because it's not accessible and it's too expensive and this and that, if all we're doing is providing it constantly, that's never fixing the problem of maybe fair wages and never fixing the problem of more accessible food and maybe not fixing. So like advocacy is not just we're solving this problem, but also we're realizing what is the bigger problem and how do we fix that so that maybe eventually we don't need food banks or don't need them as much because we fix the other problems that are causing the lack of food, right? So it's advocacy, no matter your organization. I just can't imagine if you want to truly help the people you're serving. I would think that advocacy needs to be part of it, right? Or am
Listen,
I dreaming too big here, Kimberly?
well, no, you're just making sense. And so that's not something that a lot of people are able to do right now who are in leadership positions in our country.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, 100%. It's operating from a place of fear as a nonprofit and hoping if you just keep your head down, it's all going to be okay, is probably not where you need to be right now. Just saying that. So moving on to, we have 3 buckets, and now we're going to move on to, because I just have a bucket brain. I don't know what that says about me, but I like the idea of the visual of doing that. Always have. The second bucket, and when it comes to our advocacy, is advocating for your role or profession as a grant professional or as a fundraiser, as a development director, jack of all trades kind of person in fundraising. But in particular, I would say for grant professionals, we do need to advocate. And I just want to walk us through some ideas, some things that Amanda, you and I have found over the years, some resources that would be helpful. Because here's the deal. If we're not able to talk as cogently and compellingly about the roles that we hold in organizations or with clients, then those roles will be defined for us. And people often say, and I've had this experience before of a COO coming up to me, and I've told this story before of going, oh, there you are, writing letters and filling out forms. That's just what you do all day. I'm like, wow, condescending much, Jack, which was not this person's name. So then it became more of, here's what I bring in, here's what I can do, and so if you're looking for, you're like, well, I can't possibly do that. I don't want to lose my job. I can't push back. So here's some practical, I want to list out a few practical ways to advocate. And then I want to talk about some resources that I'm pretty sure we've talked about many times before, but they're worth mentioning because they're great. So you can educate your executive director or board or whatever leadership, however your hierarchy is set up there, right? On not only on what grant professionals actually do, but couple that with how grants actually work. Because there are a lot of folks that do not understand that you're reporting to that do not understand that. And also just the way that for many of us, we do pre and post award, right? We're writing and managing, or we're tracking and developing fundraising messages. The same skills that you can use to track a grant are the same skills you can use to track your own performance. Talking about proposals submitted. I'm a big fan of proposals submitted and new funders identified and then applied to. And success rates, a lot of people tout those. I think that can be a slippery slope because if you are going after new funders or you are starting a new program, it's going to take a while before you get that funding usually, and that can affect your success rate. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's a mixed bag for me, but that is something you can track your hours per grant. And using these things, even if you're a salaried person, using these things to demonstrate the return on investment of the nonprofit or other agency in your work. Those are the kinds of simple self-advocacy things. Please don't, if I could save you 5 or 10 years, please don't wait for people to notice you and that you're doing a good job, because every once in a while someone will. And I was fortunate enough to have that happen, but most of the time they won't.
Yeah.
And if you're tracking, then pushing back on unreasonable expectations like, oh my God, you need to have a success rate of at least 90%. Oh my gosh, you're the grant writer, so you need to do it all. If you are able to demonstrate through data, which we are familiar doing, how things work and what percentage of someone's time is designated, then that's a way to advocate for yourself. Now, on a broader level, we've talked many times about being active in professional organizations. I know you and I, for years in grant professionals, Association of Fundraising Professionals, National Grant Management Association. pursuing credentials like the Grant Professional Certified, mentoring people coming into grants. These are forms of advocacy, right? Because you're helping professionalize this, and it's a technical skill. It's a highly skilled profession.
Mm-hmm.
Before, I know you've got some things you want to add. I just wanted to hold up. I think if I could count, I think there are 4 that I want to hold up here. If you're like, well, I can't, I'm not going to do, okay, fine. Let's work slowly into this thing that I feel strongly that you should be doing, but I get it. You can take part in more collective actions, right?
Yeah.
You can go and review funders, either good or bad, on grantadvisor.org. You can become involved with the organization More Than Grant Writers, who are talk about advocating for the profession. Community-centric fundraising is a group that publishes a lot of really thought-provoking and fascinating articles about advocacy in different aspects and DEI in different aspects of the fundraising community. And finally, you can send in something to Crappy Fundraising Practices. It's a huge volunteer-driven group that, through the hashtag Crappy Funding Practices, particularly on LinkedIn and other social media, will call out just those things after they vet what people have turned in, with the idea of advocating for change in grant making, which directly affects your profession in grants. So just wanted to throw out some of those ideas of things that you could do either yourself or as part of a group or quasi-anonymously, right?
Yeah. Yep. Those are all great. And I'll put links in the show notes to all those in case you don't know where to find those groups. One other thing I'll add too, as far as the show notes, and Kimberly, I don't know if you have seen this online yet or not, but 2 grant professionals we both know very well, Stacy Fitzsimmons, which is a former sponsor of the podcast. She has a company, SNF Writing Solutions, and Debbie DiVirgilio, who is also a consultant. She's a former GPA president and has been very involved in our profession for decades. They are working on a journal article that will come out at the end of 2026 about grant professionals as leaders. And right now they have a survey open that takes about 10 minutes. I took
it this morning. I did it
yesterday. So I'm not sure by the time this episode comes out if it'll still be open, but I'm going to go ahead and put the link. And if you have time, because what they're trying to do is understand better. One, do we see ourselves as leaders? Are our organizations seeing us as leaders? How are we putting ourselves out there as leader? What skill sets are we having? So I'm super excited that someone has decided to dig in and get more data and study this, because it's certainly a topic that's near and dear to Kimberly and I's heart. I will say I was always very fortunate. Every place I worked, I was given a seat at the table, as far as could be involved in strategic planning, could come to anything I wanted to, had kind of free reign to create the grants office the way I wanted it. Because both places I worked before I started consulting, I was the first grants administrator, and both my bosses were kind of like, oh, we don't know what this role is, so make it your own, right? So I was fortunate in that. And what I learned from that too is that even having a seat at the table, I still had to learn to speak up and advocate for myself, right? Which can be hard to do if you're someone who, I don't want to brag on myself. I don't want to, and so all these things, all these metrics, those were easy for me to track and share, right? And another thing that I learned, it took me a while though, because I would get emails occasionally from community partners, from funders, from whoever, thanking me for doing such a great job on something or being so easy to work with or whatever it was, right? And I learned the hard way, yes, that's great, but just me reading it only helps a little bit of me internally. So I started doing 2 things. Every time I got them, I'd still immediately send them to my boss. Hey, just got this message, thought I would share it with you. That's all I would say. And then I would hang on to a copy of it. So when it was time for my annual review, I could remind, it's not just me saying, hey, look at my metrics but look at all these people that I interact with, both funders, community members, colleagues, that tell me what a good job I'm doing and how they have enjoyed, grants scared them to death, but I made it so easy for them or whatever it was, right? And that really helped at my review time for me to be able to, it's not just going, me, I'm great, but hey, all these people think I'm great too. So that was something that helped me advocate
Yeah.
for myself, which is something I'm so much better at it now. 15 years ago, I was not very good about advocating for myself.
And it can cause resentment, right? If you don't if you don't advocate for yourself and you just keep thinking, well, nobody gets what I do, nobody understands what I do, and they just don't appreciate me.
Yeah.
Part of that in the workplace is advocating for yourself and sharing those accomplishments and everything.
Absolutely.
And I know we could talk all day about all kinds of professional advocacy, but do you want to sort of lead us out on personal advocacy?
Yeah. One more thing I will add real quick too is like part of advocacy at the professional level too is not just for grant professions, but advocacy for better funding practices, speaking out about power imbalances. I know you and I have talked a lot before about how when you first become a grant writer, it's so overwhelming and it's a lot to learn. And I mean, I know I just kept my head down and was like, write the grant, manage the grant, do the grant, not even thinking about, this is
or thinking about the systems behind it.
Yes.
It's like it can be so easy to just go, I'm just going to be a good grant writer. But even if you look at the GPC competencies, the Grant Professional Certified competencies, about a third of them, at least of the 9, don't have to do with the writing skills, which are important. It's understanding your organization and being able to, pull different teams together and get information and follow just the whole understanding the whole picture part of it is just so key to advocating for yourself in the workplace and for your profession.
Yep. So, and this the better we can make the process, the better it is for the next crop of grant professionals that are coming up behind us. So, yes, let's end on bucket number 3, which is personal advocacy, which you may be like, but Amanda, we just talked about your role. Yes, I'm talking now, nothing necessarily to do with your job. So what is personal advocacy? This is showing up for the causes you believe in as an individual, not just as a professional, right? So using all the skills and your platform and your voice, all the things you gained from being good at your job in your 9 to 5 or whatever hours you work, and taking that to show up in your personal life, right? So it's doing things like voting and helping others voting. Sometimes it's just encouraging. It blows my mind. Like I married a man who politics is like, I mean, he loves him some Georgia football, but probably more than Georgia football is politics. Like he loves it. And so we are at I don't care if it's a primary, if it's a general election, if it's a runoff, it's a second runoff, if there's one thing on the ballot or 20 things on the ballot. He has printed out copies of the ballots. We've talked about what we like, what we don't like, all those kind of things. And we're there voting on election day because like that is his jam. And it's gotten me excited about it. And we're trying to get our kids excited. Our oldest can vote, so he gets to vote now, but our youngest still doesn't. But oftentimes we go as a family and then we go celebrate at Waffle House afterwards, trying to instill in our kids the value and the importance, as one does, right? You got to say, hey, you got to say y'all, and you got to eat at Waffle House. But anyway, so voting is a big deal, and encouraging others to vote, attending town halls, school board meetings. And I will tell you, as someone who had to go to city council meetings for years, not a lot of people show up until there's something on the agenda that affects their neighborhood, and then they're out in full force, right? But it's amazing what goes on at those meetings and the day-to-day operations of your community, which are such a big deal. And I feel like so many people pay attention to the national level, which I'm not saying you don't do that. That's important. But what happens in your cities and counties and parishes or whatever towns, that affects your day-to-day life so much more. And so if you're not showing up there, I really think you're missing out. So if you've never been to a meeting, go. Right? It's open to the public. You don't have to speak. You can just go and listen.
Or
check it out.
A lot of them will stream them, even on Zoom or some really accessible platform. Or if you're like, I don't want to do that, just know that locally things like giant water sucking, energy sucking data centers. I was trying to think. It was an election in Georgia for the Public Service Commission, and these are folks that decide on those kinds of things in energy and your rates. So if you're like, oh, I'm just going to vote for the president, do you pay bills? Because you might want to pay more attention. Do you have kids in school? You might want to see who's on the school board, or it's sadly where I live, I have never had to wait in line for more than 5 minutes in any size of election, because a lot of times I'll do advanced voting or whatever. It's just, it's not this huge major inconvenience in your day, at least not yet. I think we should vote while we still can, for all the things that are important to us. So yeah, please. And you can, I remember I sent emails about the public. So I'm like, hey y'all, did you know that this thing and these folks usually stay in the blah, blah, blah. And it was some runoffy inner whatever election that had nothing to do with it wasn't a big draw, but it was really important. So don't sleep on those. And on those poll workers are delighted that you showed up, because they're like doop 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 doop. So not a big inconvenience in your day.
No. Well, and some of you may be going, well, Amanda and Kimberly, that's so easy for y'all to say. You've got all these platforms, you've got a podcast, you've got a newsletter. We all have a platform, right? You've got word of mouth. You can physically talk to people. Like Kimberly said, you can email people. You can, if you've got social media, you can post things. And I'm not saying social media is a mixed bag there. But still, there are ways that you can get out there and get your voices known. One thing I haven't done yet, but I really am wanting to do, because a lot of times, especially when it comes to local elections, most people just don't even know. Like, you've got people running for judge, and it's like, I don't even know who these people are. I don't know what they stand for. I know what's their background. I don't know any of these things. I had, it was another podcast I listened to, a couple of ladies, they threw an election education night a couple of weeks before the elections, and had printed off the ballots and had done a quick bio of each of the people running. And so it wasn't like, vote for this person and here's why. It was more of okay, let's all talk, and invited a bunch of their fellow community members. And we're just like, does anybody know these people? Does anybody have thoughts and feelings? And they just all kind of discuss and help educate one another about the different roles and positions. Like, some people don't even know, like, the county coroner, what exactly does that person do? Like, okay, we got 2 people running, but what are we voting for them to do? Right. So it was just an educational night. And I was like, what a great idea. I need the time it takes and effort to do it. I just haven't done it yet, but I was like, I would love to do that, because I have so many friends that are just like, I just don't vote because I just don't even know who's running. And I'm like, I
also say I think I love that for you. As the children say, I would never host any kind of night where but I've found our local paper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, is now always online. There's an even more hyper local paper that does, and the League of Women Voters, if they're active in your area, a lot of them will do these, send out surveys or have a series of questions that all elected officials answer. And then they publish those online, and you can go look at those. It's not, it's not really hard to do that and see. And so then it becomes more of I guess what I'm saying is, if you just don't have time, you just don't have time. Do you have time to pay higher bills? Do you have time for shitty schools? Do you have time for dirty drinking water? Do you have time for data centers that will take your water away from you? Do you have time for that? Because I don't think you're going to like that when that happens. So I get it. I get that everybody's everything, but you can go online and find free access to those things. So maybe, if this is something that's ringing your bell, you could do a little link tree kind of thing and send it out and post it. Here's where you can find this. Here's where you can find that. Here's where you can find, I've done that before. Here's advanced voting sites in DeKalb County, which is the county where I live. I mean, there's just a lot I know you probably have a couple of other things before we wrap up to get people excited about personal advocacy, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to hold up a sign and stand on a street corner and have people yell at you. Oh, you could, that could be your thing. Yeah. There's some retirement communities around me where I'll see folks out here with the hair a lot whiter than mine that are out there, some of them in wheelchairs, and they're holding up signs, advocating for their causes or their candidates or whatever. And they're just out there. They're just doing it. So you can be active and out there, you can be behind the scenes, but I'm just, the older I get, the less patience I have for people that are like, I just don't have time, it's too sad. I'm like, it's going to be real sad, and you're going to have a lot of time when things really go south. You're going to have a lot of time. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So, and personal advocacy doesn't end at just the voting is not the only thing, right? So we have some serious skills as grant professionals and fundraisers. Like if there's a cause you really, really care about, especially something maybe local in your community, you could donate some of your time. And I'm not saying give away the farm. I know we all have to make a living, but if there's something near and dear to your heart that you want to, maybe write a grant for them or spend a few hours, whatever it is, right? You could join a committee for an organization you love, or even serve on the board, right? So think about ways that you can give back personally to help a cause that means a lot to you.
And that doesn't involve, I'm out in public, I'm rabble rousing, I'm starting fights. I mean, if that is you, then do you. But there's so many things. Also, before we close, though, I feel like it wouldn't be. I just want to let people know that also I completely understand that as a consultant, as my own LLC, and then partnering with Amanda and HayDay Services, we are each other's partners. We don't have to answer to anybody. And I get that there might be some fears about, well, what about my job? If you're encouraging people to vote, just get out the vote. I'm thinking that's not a threat. But also if there's anything in your policies about how you can advocate personally for causes you believe in, make sure that you have, particularly if you're going to be in a super public role advocating for or supporting a particular candidate or something like that. I don't know the politics of your workplace. I don't know what you're facing. Yeah. I will suggest there are other things you can do if personal advocacy and professional representation kind of cross. I just also want to say that advocacy, getting away from personal advocacy, but just advocacy in general, can be a part of a sustainability strategy for your organization, right?
Fair.
Because grants, oh my Lord, not predictable. Who knew that being a federal employee was going to be like this crazy, almost dangerous thing that it is now? But understanding that you can lead from the middle. You don't have to be an executive director to advocate. And as at an organizational level, again, just stepping back to a more general level, the people with lived experiences of the issues that are part of the community that you may serve, they are often the most powerful advocates. And those are things that we as grant professionals and fundraisers do all the time, is get success stories and testimonials from people. So it's like, don't sleep on the idea of truly working together to affect that transformative change. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Thanks again to today's sponsor, the Encore Institute for Social Impact. If you want to learn more about this fantastic team whose goal is to bring healthy, sustainable success to your organization, visit EncoreISI.com. You'll find the link in our show notes.
So advocacy does not have to be scary, even though I feel like a lot of people are scared of that word. And it definitely doesn't have to mean lobbying. So whether you're speaking up for your clients, your organization, your profession, or even a cause that is near and dear to yourself personally, you are already an advocate. And thank you for that.
And the world needs more of us doing these things, right? And we understand in this field the power of making a compelling case for change. That's actually what we do, whether it's grants, whether it's Facebook ad campaigns, whether it's gala events, God help me. That's literally what we do.
Yep. So if today's episode got you thinking, we'd love to hear what you're doing to advocate in your community or your organization, or even just something personally that brought you some joy. So find us on social media, or maybe shoot us an email, hello@haydayservices.com. We love to hear from our audience.
And this is the time when we shout out what's the next subject matter. So Amanda, can you look at your magical board?
I know exactly what it is because it's one of our favorites. We're going to be talking some scary stories ripped from the headlines.
Dun, dun, dun. It's going to be great. See ya.
Bye, y'all.